are going to be reading out of our Dear America Across the Wide and Lonesome Prairie. This is a journal entry from the Oregon Trail, and it's the author, let me get it for you, I'm sorry, is Christiana Gregory, and the setting was originally Boonesville, Missouri, and the setting was 1847. Now, we the last time we read, we were in, let me try to find it for you. We were in the Ash Hollow. Sorry. We were in Ash Hollow. Oops, wrong way, right here. Ash Hollow. So they are not even halfway to their destination yet. Hattie Campbell is our narrator. She is the character in this book. She is a little girl, and I cannot remember how old she is. I apologize. We are going to get started, though. The last thing that we learned was that they have got to the point that they're seeing all these buffalo, and as they're going along, they're one of their chores, the kids' chores, would be to pick up buffalo chips. Now, buffalo chips are not food. You don't want to eat these. Well, I mean, it wouldn't be good to me, because buffalo chips are actually things that they are using to burn for firewood. It's the feces. It's the buffalo poop. They're picking up buffalo poop. They're using their resources. So that was their job. Okay, so we're gonna start up, and remember, also, they started their journey in April, their journal, but now we're just getting later in the evening, so I don't know what day it is yet, but eventually, like every once in a while, they'll figure out what day it is and tell us, so maybe eventually we'll get back to a day, but if you are following along with me, I'm on page 57. Okay. Evening, the sun is scorching hot. Ma insists I wear my bonnet to protect my face, but the cloth itches my scalp. When Pepper and I are out walking, we carry them like baskets to gather flowers. It feels cooler to let the wind blow my hair back, and besides, I think boys like looking at us better without them. The Mormons are still on the north side of the Platte. Sometimes all we see is their dust because they move faster. Ma says it's because they're traveling with just 2 children instead of 200, like we have in our train. Babies slow things up. That's just the way it is, she says. I told Pa that Brigham Young must be very religious because he makes his people rest on the Sabbath. No traveling. Pa laughed. He said, I still ain't in agreement with the Brigham Young's theology, but if he wants to rest on the Sabbath, good for him. But Hattie, don't judge a man only by how strict he keeps rules. Tall Joe is the guide that's helping them get west. Tall Joe said that up here soon the routes will meet at Fort Laramie, and like it or not, we'll be traveling alongside the Mormons and their 73 wagons. Pepper and I plan to meet the 2 children. Later, there is much celebration today and tears of joy after 3 days of sleeping. Wade sat up, looked around, and said, Mother, I am hungry as a bear, just like that. Who remembers what happened to Wade? Oh, poor Hattie. I bet she is like so thrilled. Now, Wade had eaten some of poor Hattie's stew that she made. It was their job. It was her job to make stew for the night. And the children, as they go along the prairie, their jobs were to, if they found I'm sorry, I had a phone call. So if they had wild carrots, if they found them, they were supposed to pick them. And as they were going along, they would pick all of those fresh vegetables that they found. They found one that they weren't supposed to pick, but they didn't know that. So she was making the stew. A little girl was there and she wanted some of the food, so she gave it to her. I'm trying to find, I don't want to tell you wrong. So she gave her some of the food, and she went along, but she didn't put that in the stew yet. Then the boys came along and they ate some of it, but the girl wasn't to be found. The boys, all of a sudden, they started like foaming at the mouth and shaking. They were having seizures. Do you remember that? Do you remember what happened? They were being poisoned by, I'm trying to find it. Darn it. I will find it. I am so sorry. They were trying to gather parsnips and carrots, but instead she got hemlock. Hemlock was the poison. So Wade, so the little girl, she ended up dying. She was little. She ended up dying. The boys were foaming at the mouth by the fire. They could see that, so they took coal and they ground it up and they tried forcing it in their mouth, but two of the boys, they could not get it in their mouth because their jaws were clenched. So instead, the boys died. But Wade, he did not. They were able to force his mouth open, and so they could get coal in there, and it kind of made him throw up and get some of that poison out. And so for 3 days, he had been asleep. They were feeding him or doing spoons full of water and broth, and he woke up and now he's super hungry. What a wonderful, wonderful news for everyone. I am sure like everyone was so sad for those other kids, but now this is wonderful news for their whole group. Okay, Pepper and I joined hands with Gideon and the little Anderson girls and Jake Benny. We danced around Wade's wagon and sang, Mrs. Lewis cries and cries. She is so thankful to God for healing her son. He is too weak to walk, but her father carried him down to the river's edge to a sandy beach. He bathed him, then helped him dress into clean clothes. Now Wade's sitting in the shade, wearing a blue shirt and pants. I am so glad to see his beautiful green eyes. Again, Pepper can't stop giggling. She's so happy. She sits by her brother, just talking and talking to him. Another day. Clouds build up like white towers. Then, in the afternoon, they turn black. Near every day, we hear the low rumblings of thunder, and we feel heavy drops of rain, enough to settle the dust and coat the wheels with mud, but no downpour. We see mighty herds of buffalo in the distance to either side of the trail. Often, there are men on horseback moving along a ridge. If Indians are following us, they're keeping their distance. Maybe they are just curious and don't plan to murder us. This morning, I read back through this journal and laughed when I saw what I had written about Boonville. I am afraid of only 4 things. Ma says that people who are thinkers often change their opinions. It means you're growing. So here's what I think. Some things I was afraid of, I'm not afraid of now, and the other way around. I am not so scared about snakes anymore. I have not had a toothache, and Indians haven't hurt us. Even Benny and Jake don't worry me so much. They are much stronger on their legs and stay close to the wagon. So here's my new list. I am afraid of hemlock. And number 2, fast rivers. That's all. I want you to think, what are some of your fears now? You may have had fears before that you don't have now. I have fears now that I didn't have whenever I was younger, and I had fears whenever I was younger that I don't have now. Like, when I was younger, I used to be really, really, really afraid of storms. Now, I don't care about them at all. At all. They don't make me afraid at all. I don't think they'll hurt me. I think we'll be safe. I know that right now we're kind of all dealing with being in our home in a different way. So you may have a different fear right now. Or you may be afraid of a spider. And I'm not afraid of a spider. You may change your mind about being afraid of a spider, right? So you may change your mind as you grow older too about what things you're afraid of and what you're not afraid of. Later, Wade walked today. For about 15 minutes, he steps low and gets tired easy. When we ask if he remembers what happened, he squints and looks up at the sky. Nope, he says, after a while. He knows we're on our way to Oregon, and he does remember being on a riverboat some time ago. He knows his family, and today he said my name. He says, Hattie, your cheeks are sunburned. Then he smiled at me. At noon, we sat by a stream where it was shady. Aunt June and Mrs. Anderson have become close friends, and the 4 girls are like having my very own sisters again. Ma helps carry for baby Eliza May. We were cooling our feet in the water when we heard loud voices arguing. 2 men were yelling words I can't repeat. I ran through the grass and saw Mr. Kinker with a pistol. Do you know what a pistol is? I do. Pointed at Tall Joe, and there was Mrs. Kinker, her hands on her hips, also yelling. Tall Joe yanked off his beaver hat and threw it to the dirt. 15 miles a day is what we'll do, like it or not, he said, his face 2 inches away from Mr. Kinker's spit. Oh, Mr. Kinker's. Sorry. Spit came out. He was so mad. And the next time you point a gun at me, mister, I'll slice your ears off. Oh my gracious. Don't you forget. Wowzer. Mrs. Kinker piped in. You dare you speak to my husband like that way? We're just poor old people looking to start a new life, and you're nothing but a liar. You stinks to high heaven. I don't know why we ever let you be the leader. Tall Joe's eyes narrowed. And you, he said, pointing his fingers at her, you bother me worse than a corpse on a hot day. Do you know what a corpse is? It's a dead body. On a hot day, think about like a dead animal outside on a hot day. It would be smelly. He grabbed Mr. Kinker's pistol and aimed it at the wagon seat where a pie was cooling. The first shot made the pan spin. The second splattered it. Mrs. Kinker's hand flew up in shock, and what she screamed at Tall Joe, I ain't repeating that either. Pa later told us that the Kinkers have been pestering Tall Joe to slow down because they are plumb wore out. The mister has something wrong with his backside, so it hurts him to sit many hours driving their team, and she don't like the bugle at 4 o'clock every morning, and there's too much crying children, and so on. One complaint after another. I was upset to see old people yelled at. They must be 50 years of age. Even though I don't trust Mrs. Kinker, she sometimes still reminds me of my grandmother, the way she looks, I mean. Last week in May, thereabouts, in the far distance, we can see something poking up from the horizon like a thumb pointing at the clouds. Tall Joe says this is Chimney Rock. It is the closest thing to a mountain that I have ever seen. The woman who had a baby back in Ash Hollow. The woman who had a baby back in Ash Hollow died of fever this morning. She was buried on a bluff overlooking the valley. Her newborn daughter is being cared for by another mother, and friends are helping the father with his 3 little boys. Oh, that breaks my heart. They have 3 little boys and a newborn, and now the new mama died. That breaks my heart. So much death has happened in the life on this journey. Okay, so I just want to do a recap really quick. So, they started down here. They got up on the steamboat and went to Independence, got off at Independence, got on the trail, and went Ash Hollow. We're now going to Chimney Rock. Our next location is Chimney Rock. Okay, so we're going to read a little bit about Chimney Rock. For two long days, we approached Chimney Rock. It seemed to take forever. 2 evenings, we watched the sun set behind it as we ate supper. Now that we hear it's a curious sight, a huge pile of rocks with what looks like a stone chimney rises up from its center. Jake and several boys hiked around its base and counted 10,000 steps. I don't know how they kept track of so many numbers, but they did. Tall Joe said some other folks counted years past, and they also said 10,000. Oh man, I would cheat. I would want my watch. But I'm impressed they counted 10,000 steps. Could you do that? Could you count 10,000 steps? That's impressive. Boys with rifles are shooting at the top of Chimney Rock to see what will happen. They like the fuss and noise. Now some families have souvenir chips tucked in their wagons. The plains are dry with no trees. We are slowly moving toward the Pacific Ocean, but it's near impossible for me to picture a sea other than the sea of grass. All around is open space with colors of gold, green, and brown. I feel we are specks, like bugs crawling across the kitchen floor. It is very pretty, but I miss the sight and smell of trees. I do miss my Missouri River. To think I might never again hear the long, high whistle of a steamboat makes me feel lonesome. Wow. We are learning a lot as we go. So we have discovered that as we go along, that the scenery has changed. The plains. I'm sorry. So here you have a lot of grass and it gets flat, and now we're getting to where there's no trees and it's dry. She's starting to get lonesome of home in the Missouri. She calls it the Missouri. We call it Missouri. The Missouri River. I wonder what would be something that you would miss about your home. There would be several things that I would miss about our Missouri. I love Missouri for sure. Think about that. And if you have some I want you to comment some things that you would miss about your home. Until next time, we will read more tomorrow. Thanks for joining me.